Hello, everybody. This is Dren 608 with another Unconditional Surrender in Europe session. It's the final turn of a game that finished just this last Saturday, June 13th. Game is published by GMT Games, designed by Salvatore Vasta. We made it to July 1945. And just to give you an idea of what things look like, I'm going to scroll around the map a bit before I start the vlog. The Germans held out fairly well. They still hold Frankfurt and Hanover, Leipzig, Dresden, Prague, Vienna, and Munich. So 7 cities for the West and the Soviets to try and capture. If you will look at the national tracks here, the Germans have 29 willpower. They've managed to keep the Yugoslavs and the Swedes in the war till the very end here. And so we'll begin with the vlog and how things go. We pretty much skipped right over the strategic warfare because it wouldn't matter at this point. And the Germans started moving, and you'll see them doing massive amounts of withdrawals and whatever. This is their strategic move. He decided not to do that one. He moved this one instead. On we go. I didn't have any strategic moves for the west of the Soviet. We went into German operations. And this is where he starts doing his defensive moves. He's going to basically build what he called Fortress Munich, or at least what I called Fortress Munich. Oh, we rewound here because he wanted to do something different. I can't remember what it was he did. Oops, I just rewound all those turns. So let's get back to there. He moves that infantry forward, gets the garrison out of the way. Oops. As you can see, the way he's moving, he's basically setting up fortress situations as best as he can. He's trying to make it as hard as possible for me to get to Munich. You see, there's 2 panzers around there. There's basically 4 units between the Americans and Munich. There's a couple units between the Russians and Prague. Dresden, he kind of said, yeah, you're going to get it sooner or later. And he also tried to build up a fairly good line to try and slow me down to get to Vienna. All he really needs to hang on to is 1 willpower and 1 city in order to win this. And so it went to the west, and I started placed down some surprise attack markers. You see I've turned on the areas so I could figure out the best place to place them, because I wanted to make sure that I covered as many of the cities and hexes that I'm attacking as possible. So this is me playing around trying to figure out where the best surprise attack marker placements are, and this turned out to be where I thought they were the best. So and here comes an attack. On the 6th SS Panzer, because I had it isolated. This was a mistake that we made. The SS Panzer really should have been out of supply, so this should have actually been even a better attack. So it should have been an 11 to a 5, which means I should have eliminated it immediately, but I didn't. So that's something. However, it turned out to be pretty much the same thing because I would have done what I did with this armored unit. I would have done the same thing because I would have attacked the 17th because I'm trying to get Frankfurt isolated. So it wouldn't have mattered. I would have had 2 extra movement points, but I wouldn't have known what to use them with. So, oh, by the way, for those of you that were paying attention, in a moment here, we're going to discover that I don't have an air unit in Britain, and I'll be moving Bomber Command back to it. Meanwhile, the attack continues from the west. Oh, here we go. So he threw his tanks marker and I threw my ultra marker. This was a mistake on my part. I should have saved the ultra marker for when I was going after the cities. If I'd have done that, I actually would have won the game. So, right there was my strategic mistake. I failed to take the hex. 7 to a 9. And that ended that. So, then I went on to try and finish this. I moved forward to there. I attacked at Hanover. And moved forward and 9 to a 6. Forced him to retreat. I moved in and I think we just deleted the airplane because it wasn't going to make any difference either way. Either way, so I've captured the city. And I ended up rolling a 10 to a 1. It was like, there was a 6-1 split that I would have much rather had that somewhere else. I couldn't figure out if I wanted to take the hex or not, so you see me kind of moving around, and I ended up going there instead, because I had 1 movement point left. So I set my movement points up, and then decided to move the British 8th Army in, and it's going to try and take Leipzig. So I was a 5 to a 3, and it didn't work. 8 to a 7 total. I did it again, and we ended up with an 8 and an 8, so I was like, dang. So then I moved the 1st Canadian up, and again, I made a small error here. Instead of attacking Leipzig, I should have left it for the Russians, and I should have tried to get rid of the garrison unit that was keeping him from being isolated. But I was so intent on trying to take the city that I wasn't really paying attention. So there's a 7 to a 7. I have no movement points left, and I get an 11 to a 10. So he matched my die rolls and kept me from taking Leipzig. So then I decided I needed to go ahead and go after the 1st Parrot in Frankfurt. Since he had no retreat route, I couldn't get him isolated, but and the reason why I'm +5 is I'm +1 for American, +2 for armor, +2 for an airplane, +1 for surprise attack marker, -1 for the city. So I ended up being +5 to his +3, which ended up with a miss here. So then I attacked again, and it was a 10 to a 7, which is just enough to force him to have to flip. And then the next attack was enough to take him out. And I move in and take that, and I have no movement points left. So now comes the 3rd Army. He moves 1 across the river because of the rail line, attacks the 2nd. I get a 10 total, and he has a 5, so he's retreated. Then I attacked the 1st across the river. Again, the surprise attack markers are helping me. I get an 8 to a 4, which forced him to retreat, which now put me next to Munich. See, now if here I had the Ultra, I ended up rolling a 10, and he rolled an 8, which is exactly what he needed to save me. If I'd have had the Ultra there, I would have had an 11, he would have been retreated, and I would have taken Munich. So, be careful when you spend your Ultras, especially when you only have 1 left. Should have saved it from when I was attacking cities. So that failed. And then the rest of the American army decided to move in and just try and kill things. I was trying to get will points by destroying armies, because I could possibly win that way if I could kill enough. And I blew that one up and decided to not take that hex, and I attacked northward instead. Flipped him, but then... And this is him adjusting his national will for all the things that he lost. Then the first army ran in here. And killed that one unit. So now he's down to 21. And I basically ran out of Western units really to do anything. I went ahead and tried a silly attack down here just because I could. And that failed miserably and stopped me. And that's when I realized that I had a bomber that shouldn't be there, so I put him back in England where he belonged. 9th Army. And then we moved right on into the Soviets. We didn't worry about supply, again, because it didn't really matter. I think I could have supplied everything, but it didn't matter whether it did or not, because this is the last turn. So the Soviets placed their surprise attack marker to try and get the best attack they can. They're going to have pluses on Prague and Vienna. So I kept playing around trying to figure out what was the best hex to be in. I think I finally decided, because I was looking for all the cities I had to try and take as the Russians. There was no way I couldn't think I could get to Munich unless it was like by a very bizarre twist here. So off we went. The 3rd Guards Tank Army started by attacking the Nora with my last partisans. Hungary had gone Soviet in 1940. That's why I could play a partisans there. A series of political failures by the Germans gave me Hungary, and I didn't know what to do with it with the Soviets. Actually, they had 2 political successes. That's what it was. Because political failures would have made it go to the West. So I forced him, had to attack him again. Second time, 11 to a 3. Was good, and then I attacked again, I believe. 8 to a 5, which was only a retreat. And then a 4 to a 2 was another retreat. And then I chose not to take the hex because I wanted that open hex to try and attack Vienna. That has the armor in it. So now you'll see some shock armies move in, trying to clear a path here. 6 to 1 eliminated the garrison. Then I came in from the north with the Soviets. And in we go, attacking the mountain unit. Guy in the mountain. And a 7 to a 3 was enough to flip him, so I did it again. And I eliminated him. And I went ahead and took a chance here. Got a 9 to a 5, which was enough to retreat the guy in Prague. So the Russians had taken Prague, and they're opening the way to get to Vienna. Because now the 15th Army up here is going to be isolated, which I will be taking care of in just a moment. Then I flew an airplane that I had gotten to 5 sorties. I flew it back so it's within 3 of the east, and I flew this one forward. That's why you see that sudden pause between attacks for switching an airplane out. Gives me a couple extra sorties. I really didn't have enough sorties when I was going into this. The Germans did a very good job of... you saw a bunch of their face down, all of their airplanes at 6. For a long time, they would all have 2 sorties, and I would have to spend a couple sorties to keep them from helping defend so that I could make any kind of an attack at all. It was a very skilled defense as the Germans. Of course, here we go, 7 to an 8. And then a 6 to a 3, which forced him to be. Flipped the shock army. I had this guards army attack again. A 4 to a 6, which stopped me. So I stopped attacking in the south and went and tried to do something else. Moved around for 4 movement points to attack Dresden. And then I decided that wasn't the way I wanted to do it. I wanted to start here. The Russians played a tanks marker there. And 5 to a 3 was enough to retreat, in which caused him to flip, but I didn't have any more movement points left. Or actually I did. So I took that with that. That made my life a lot easier. Again, I'm trying to isolate the guys in Vienna. And then this armored unit went ahead and attacked the 1st Panzer. So, 13 to a 9. Flipped him, and then an 8 to a 3. Got rid of him. Then I had this shock army attack and succeed with an 8 to a 5. He can't retreat because he's zones of control. So he's isolated. Then it was a 5 to a 4. So then I had to attack across the river. And I moved up a space because I figured attacking across the river, I might not make it. But because of the isolation, I got enough of a plus, and he rolled poorly enough that it led me to take the hex. And onward we go. Now I was able to get a guards unit in here to attack the 15th. And a 7 to a 3 finally eliminated that. Then I moved here, and I said, no, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. So I moved him out of the way. Oh, I think I moved the wrong unit. Yeah. So he attacked the Nor with no retreat route and was stopped. So this shock army went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I moved the guards tank army in, because I could move over the rail, let me have 2 attacks at the German armored unit, who's now isolated. Moving that airplane around was to show my opponent which one I was using. Ended up with a 12 to a 10. Then I got a 12 to an 8, so I got them flipped, but that was where I was kind of stuck. I was starting to run out of Russian units, so up came a guards unit. We're out of tanks, so I'm attacking him only at +2 net, I believe. Because of the isolation and the surprise attack marker. I got to +4, but I have to subtract 1 for the city, 1 for the river. And I rolled well. I got an 8 to a 4, which forced him to retreat, which he couldn't do, so he was eliminated. And up we went. So he's down to like 17 will now at this point, I think, or 7. I can't remember. I'm going to take a quick break here and look at his, whoops, not the turn track, that was silly, the national wills. And he's down to 7 will. I'm very, very close. But I've run out of Russian units that can kill German units that will cost him willpower. Bets. His defense was just enough. And then here's a little tricky thing that I did. I used up my last airplane to go after the Panzer unit, and I got lucky, forced him to flip. But then I attacked the second garrison instead of the Panzer again, forced him to retreat, and then I did this. I moved the armor to there, and you might say, why didn't you just move him, whatever. He's in a zone of control. The enemy zone of control is the British as well as the Germans. So he moved there, called an assault. The shock army moved in. So we ended up at +3 for 5 -1. So I think it was a net +4. And then I rolled a 10, which took that, and I took Leipzig. At this point, I think I looked around a bit, but I couldn't get anywhere, so we stopped. So we ended up here. If you look at the map, 1 pip on the die roll down here in Munich, 1 pip on the die roll was the saving grace for the Germans. They managed to win because I could not take him completely out. I had knocked him down to 5 will, or 4 will, in 1 city. So one more fair weather turn in August would have definitely, it's definitely going to win in August. But I had to do it by the end of July, and I couldn't. As a caveat to this, the Germans knocked the Russians out, collapsed them in September of 1942. 1943, we fought, I took out Italy at the end of early in 1943. Spain came in on my side. Vichy France came in on my side. Portugal came in on my side. Ireland came in on my side for the Western Allies. The Russians had the Turks as an ally. They had gotten the Hungarians, who were immediately conquered by the Germans in 1941. The Germans picked up Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Romania, Finland, and Sweden as allies, as well as Italy. This is to show you that even though the Russians get collapsed, we came within 1 die roll of conquering Germany, which is just about what it, historically, that's about right. It was a near run thing. We did it in May in history, but that also included a, winter offensive in the Ardennes, which was ill-advised, and some other not so bright ideas on the Eastern Front that the German army was required to do because of their leader. Playing it smart like this, the Germans just about pulled it off. I was very pleased with this game. My opponent was excellent. I made a couple of mistakes. In the May offensive for the Russians, this 4th Guards unit that ended up in Dresden, he actually could have been in Leipzig at the end of May if I had counted correctly. He could have moved around the line and actually hit Leipzig, which would have made the German defense a little bit harder because their armored unit wouldn't have been able to run up there and get in my way on the way to Leipzig and be able to garrison it. But I made several mistakes like that are not, you don't think that they're really huge, but when you get to the end game like this, they turn out to be much larger than you thought. So that there, kids, is a July 1945 turn with a Russian collapse. We almost made it. We came back a real long way. Germany only had 4 will left, but they did hang on to 1 city, and that's all that was required of them. So there you have it. I thought you might find it interesting to see this. Comments are welcome. Like I said, this was a very tense game for the last 6 turns. Every weather die roll in October, November, March and April, the German was dreading giving me fair weather because he knew I would be able to break through if I got one more fair weather turn. And we both agreed with that. And even without it, I came within 1 pip on a die roll, which, if I had been thinking, I would have been able to throw in an ultra on that attack on Munich to give me an extra +1, which would have ended up winning it. But be that as it may, little mistakes like that. I figured I had to use the ultra marker against a tanks marker. I didn't think he should have used the tanks marker where he did. I would have saved it for Munich myself because that's more important. Frankfurt was probably going to be lost anyway because I had enough units to attack it one way or another. So if that guy got retreated, so what? It wouldn't really matter. But this does matter. So it could have been that, it would have even been worse for me attacking Munich if he'd have saved his tanks marker. So we both make decisions that were interesting. He did play very skillfully with his Air Force on his withdrawal. He was managed to, at the end of 44 and beginning of 45, he always had like 2 or 3 airplanes. He had just enough production because he didn't have to move very much. He just had enough production to, bring up 2 or 3 airplanes. And it didn't seem like it's much, but just the fact that they're there was like, okay, I have to spend a couple of sorties to take each one down because you can't have them helping out the defense. You're already, stretched trying to beat the German infantry and armored units as it is. So, any event, that's my conclusion to the game. It was very well played by my friend. I think it's Cheesehead16 here on Board Game Geek. If you want to, contact him and congratulate him on a very well played game. If you like my videos, please subscribe. Please leave comments. I will answer them. Probably not as fast as you want me to because I don't check my comments as often as I should. And there will be some more of this coming. I have at least one request out there to try and do a video series on the Soviets versus the West, East versus West, which I'm contemplating going ahead and doing. I might do it in a little different style than what I did before, which was sort of a rambling style as I was playing. And I think what I may do is something more like this, where I will play back the vlog and explain what I'm thinking when I'm doing it, as I'm doing it, so that it's maybe a little bit faster. Anyway, this is Dren608. We'll see you in a little bit. Bye-bye.